Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. We're here today with a man who some may know from the 1% Way, some the Tattooed Monk, and we're here to understand him better. Welcome, Glenn.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for making the time today.
My pleasure, thank you.
Yeah, so let's get straight into it and tell us how you spend your time.
That's a big question. I'd say a proportion of meditation. I'm also a personal trainer, so I have clients that are doing everything from fitness to the nutrition part of it, as well as the mental part as well.
Yeah.
Trying to create a social brand in terms of the Tattooed Monk, which is taking a lot of time at the moment. And working out myself, and I've just got into free diving, so doing a lot of breath work and into the free diving part. So yeah, so it's quite good fun.
So many places I want to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and just tell us a bit more about the 1% Way as well, because that's something that you're doing with businesses and people.
So it was kind of an amalgamation of 30 odd years of business that you kind of have a concept and an idea that you don't really understand, or how you go about your day, or how you set yourself targets.
Yeah.
And the 1% Way is the philosophy that we kind of introduce to companies of taking incremental change. So we say if you're 1% better every day, that's a 38% increase in terms of productivity, turnover, whatever it might be in the year.
Yeah.
More importantly, if you don't do that 1% change, it's actually a 1,500% loss.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's more about just being a better person, or doing things better, but not getting overwhelmed with the goal, enjoying the ride, and just that 1% way is the better way.
So how does the 1% Way and the Tattooed Monk go? Are they similar things? What's the?
I think what the Tattooed Monk's more the personal brand and sort of the figurehead in terms of the 1% Way. 1% Way is the name of the company, and that's what we kind of pitched towards. And the Tattooed Monk, I guess, in terms of a character, is the figurehead of that.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you who'll be watching this, consuming this on YouTube or on Spotify, if you turn your phone sideways and see it, those who can't, Glenn has a very, very impressive array of ink.
Thank you. Many years and lots of pain.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, inevitably, the question's got to be, how did you get there?
How did I become tattooed, or how to become a monk?
Well, let's start with the monk. Let's start with that. So.
Wow, so I never wanted to become a monk. That's the honest start of the journey, really. For the last 4 or 5 years, I'd kind of been asking myself, what's my purpose, I guess. My background was always quite a sort of strong, disciplined background in terms of family life, in terms of my military career, in terms of my business, and the sort of spiritual path, and it was a little bit too woo-woo for me, and I didn't really kind of accept it or believe it. That mental health thing didn't apply to me.
Yeah.
And then it kind of slowly started to realise that actually maybe there's something missing here. Maybe the fulfilment of having X number of businesses, X number of fast cars, etc., becomes a bit boring after a while. And what's the purpose? What's the drive? It then culminated in philosophy and reading lots of books, sort of the Eckhart Tolle, being in the now, things like that. And I thought these seemed a bit diluted and a little bit too westernized, I guess, really, in terms of the philosophy of what they were trying to teach. And it was, what's the true meaning? And then, unfortunately, at the back end of 2021, we were obviously in the horrible grips of COVID. Me as a fit, strong lad, didn't have COVID, double vaccinated, double booster, etc., and was one of the first in the UK to get Omicron. And it absolutely wiped me sideways to the point of hospitalisation. And yeah, it was a real turning point. Right. So physically lost a lot of weight, mentally drained, etc. And I went into sort of 2022 thinking, I'm done. This is, I'm literally done, burnt out.
Mentally, physically, the whole thing?
Absolutely everything. Literally, it was a kind of a real turning point of, I just can't do this anymore. And I literally walked into the office with the team that day, and we were running a number of tattoo studios at the time, and said, I'm selling, I'm done. And we had disposed of some of the lower ending ones. We sold off some of the higher ending ones. But ultimately, it meant that I would have to go bankrupt. So I lost my business. I then had to personally go bankrupt. So I lost pensions and houses and everything else that came around it. And ultimately, when you get through that, which is a horrible place to be, you have a breakdown. And that's literally, I guess now looking back, that's what I did. I literally broke down.
So that decision, that I'm done. Tell me a bit about that. How did you know? How did you know that was?
I just think it was more of a calling card. You know, I'd been running on empty for such a long time. When COVID hit, and obviously running a chain of tattoo studios, we were obviously the first to close. But they don't like having contact with people. We obviously didn't get as much financial support as some other industries. We were the first to close, the last to open. We unfortunately had lots of landlords that didn't renege or kind of give us flexibility. We had lots of commitments in terms of the business, the way the business runs as well. So our hazardous waste, for example, they were still wanting to be paid for collecting of hazardous waste that we weren't producing. So there's a huge financial strain on the business. And although we were a successful, profitable business, no debt within the business whatsoever, your war chest of cash only goes so far. And it meant invariably that we had to borrow money. So in the January of before then, the sort of big lockdown just before Christmas, we had to go and borrow 7 figures. And when that then affected my health and the stress that came from that, it was just, what am I doing this for? I don't have a legacy. I don't have shareholders. I'm not looking to sell the company. I'm not looking to grow or go from there. And it was almost like I wanted a reset. And so now I look back at those moments and that time, and I guess there were lots of moments within those 5 years of where the universe was telling me to stop or to slow down or to change track or to pivot. And I didn't. I just carried on, hammer and tong, smashing it out and doing well, financially, but just taking that toll. I mean, I remember when we locked down for the first time and everyone was like, the weather's fantastic and everyone's having like barbecues and having nice time. I was literally stuck in our tattoo studios doing refurbs from them. So the entire lockdown process, I've never been busier. We bought 13 more businesses as well at that time as well that were distressed, and we kind of got them up to a level that we thought was going to be good. And then just the financial pressure and everything else, and just no customers, and that war chest that I was on about just going down and down and down.
I can understand a little bit of that because my business was all around interfacing with people. So I can completely, suddenly lockdown happens and you've got no customers. But that's quite something. And you mentioned then, so not only was that was enough, but the calling piece. And so talk to me a bit about the process that you've then gone through. So that was a moment in time that then caused you to do what?
So I mean, that was kind of it was by design more than anything else, I guess, really. So I'd kind of come out of obviously the bankruptcy had started, and we were in for a lot of money at that point, and I lost literally everything. And I was sort of dabbling around within music and didn't know really what I wanted to do. And I thought, I was reading more and more and more, and I thought I just need to go and just stop. I described it as being in the rapids. And actually just literally at that point, after the bankruptcy and after getting my health back on track, it was like grabbing hold of a root of a tree and the water still being a torrent, and looking up at someone on the bank and going, God, I'd give my right arm to be on that bank just to be on stable ground. And I thought, I just need to sort me out. And then a friend of mine introduced me to acupuncture. And I was like, Glenn doesn't do acupuncture. That's a bit woo-woo. And I went and had acupuncture, and it was just absolutely life-changing. Just that one session that I had, it just seemed to give me a moment of clear, gave me my creativity back. I thought, maybe there's something in this. And so I started to read a bit more, and this M word, this meditation word kept coming up. So I thought, I'll give this meditation thing a go. So I'd do about 2 minutes and fall asleep for half an hour, and then I'd do another day and I'd maybe do 5 minutes and fall asleep for 2 hours. I thought, well, meditation is sleep, is it not? And obviously I'm not sleeping. I hadn't been sleeping for years.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, do you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to go away. I'm going to go away and have a break from the UK, which I hadn't had for a long, long, long time, and learn meditation. So, of course, you go onto Google and type in meditation retreat, and it's just full of Americans trying to find themselves, a bit watered down, a bit more sort of chill and relaxing. I thought, that's not really what I want. And I thought, who's the best person to teach me meditation? Well, monks are pretty good at it, I think.
Perfect.
So I did a quick Google search and ended up signing up for an international ordination program in the north of Thailand.
Right.
Booked a ticket and sent an application in, and I had to go through the whole process of application, and I was accepted. And I thought, okay, fine. So I literally flew to Thailand, to Bangkok, and got the connecting flight to Chiang Mai, and I got picked up. And I drove 3.5 hours north of Chiang Mai up into the mountains, up into the forest. And I'm in a monastery with 65 other monks. And okay, so day one, we are kind of introduced to our tents where we're staying and our thinnest of thin mattresses. And this is the clothes you have to wear. I was like, oh, okay, I have to change.
Yeah, and no mobile phone, I'm guessing.
Of course, yeah. So there was a complete detox for 30 days was the original plan.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that'll be really good for me. So your phone, your laptop and your iPad goes into a bag and it gets put into a safe and locked.
Yeah.
You do have access to it if you wanted to, but the monks kind of discouraged it massively. So you start living like a monk, a white T-shirt and it's called a sabong, which is like a purple skirt, if you like.
Yeah.
And we're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and meditating and doing all this sort of stuff. I thought it was a bit strange. And learning the Dharma, which is the words, the sort of passages of what we're doing, and learn to chant, which is completely alien. And I was the only international. They were all Thais. Right. So I thought, okay. And then I remember my first meditation. It was the very next day after arriving. And I did 5 minutes without falling asleep. I thought, whoa, this is great. Yeah. But I was very lucky. You know, we just had, there was a new sort of intake of they were called teaching monks that had just spent the last 5 years in what they call a meditation cluster. And they were in Bangkok itself. And for the last 5 years, they had been meditating non-stop for 16 hours a day. And I thought, well, this is probably the closest I can get from someone that can really teach meditation.
It's interesting, isn't it? 'Cause, I mean, this whole meditation thing as we're going past, because it's something which, not on the scale that you've experienced at all, but meditation for me was, that sounds like burning joss sticks and sitting on the beanbag. But I've been meditating for probably a year, for sort of 10 minutes, 20 minutes,
good,
that kind of thing. And there was a quote, and I don't know who said this, so, if anybody knows, please put it in the comments. But and it was, if you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes a day, then meditate for half an hour.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, very quickly I got to 40 minutes without falling asleep, which I thought was a massive accolade for me. And then at the back end of that, so after probably 3 weeks, we were doing 6 hours a day, every day.
So for the uninitiated, let's just explore a bit what meditation is then. So what's happening in that time?
It depends who you ask is the honest answer to that. Yeah. So if you look at anything, I call it meditation and Western meditation, and what we get taught in the West is Western meditation, which is extremely different from everything that you'll ever learn from a monk, I guess, in some way. So I'm very blessed that I have the ability to teach other people how to meditate. I wouldn't say properly, but just differently. Yeah. I don't like the word meditation because it kind of conjures up, well, I'm going to be sitting in the lotus position, and as you said, burning those joss sticks. One, I don't own joss sticks, and two, I can't sit in the lotus position. So for me, it's a case of sitting comfortably. Yeah. They also say that meditation, you should clear your mind. Well, the very first thing that we were taught by the monks is that your mind was not made to be clear. your mind was there as your greatest tool.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to try and clear that, good luck, because no one on earth can ever clear a mind.
Yeah.
So it was more of a case of acceptance of the thoughts that come into your head.
Right. Okay.
So the way I now teach it is that when you settle in and you get yourself comfortable and you get your breathing correct, and then you start focusing down onto that meditation, as we call it, is I pretend I'm sitting there with a big bag of popcorn watching a movie reel. So I'm watching the trailers of a movie. And so a thought will come into my head and I let it play, and then I let it move out of my head and the next trailer will come along. So if you have that process, eventually what will happen is, over time, and it does take time and practice because it is a muscle, you do need to exercise it, is that you'll then get into that clear state of the trailers will stop coming as quickly and as frequently, and you'll start to focus maybe on one or two things.
Okay.
And you just accept those in. Now, someone from my background that has been very, very strict, very much I don't do woo-woo and everything else, acceptance is the first thing that you have to learn.
It's interesting. You mentioned Eckhart
Tolle, yeah.
I read a book a few months ago now called 10 to Zen, which is a bit like, something to sort of, a routine to get into daily. And he mentioned The Power of Now, which I've subsequently read.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. And it's quite interesting because the space that I work in, working with a lot of people, helping them sort of change mindset and that kind of thing. The thing that I've realised, and I kind of knew it without knowing it, if you know what I mean, we spend most of our time flitting between future and past. We kind of don't exist here.
Well, that's our ego that's putting us in both of those directions.
Yeah.
In terms of what we perceive we'll be in the future and what we perceive we have been.
Yeah.
And I think if we can get rid of ego, which is the hardest thing in the world to do because it drives every single part of every Westerner's lifestyle for sure, it's okay. It's very, very difficult to do. I enjoyed The Power of Now, but the difference, I guess, for me was that learning the Dharma, which is our readings and our books, there's a lot more. If you could sort of read, I'm trying to describe it as if you were to read Eckhart Tolle, you've read 25% of the Dharma in terms of one passage. There's a lot more meaning and understanding behind it. Yeah. And that's not to sort of discredit Eckhart Tolle, because I think he's a fantastic guy, and what he's done in terms of bringing it to the masses is huge. It's also the same as Sharma, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, all those type of books. They're great, and I've read all of them, but they're giving a very, very diluted westernized version. And I think that's great, that's fine. And if you need more, then go and read the Dharma, because it will actually help hugely.
Because I suppose the reality here is not everyone will have the opportunity to do what you've done, yet there is so much goodness. I mean, there's a lot of talk about sort of mental well-being. I like to consider it mental fitness. It's looking after what we've got, and I suppose it's making it. And that's why I asked what happens in meditation, because I think most people could meditate and actually have already created the time, but they don't use it. Sat in the bath, you could.
Well, 100%. I mean, I've got clients now that I either go to their house or we meet up and we talk about meditation. I said I don't like the word meditation because it kind of gives the wrong impression. Most of the time, I mean, there's little techniques. I do a chocolate meditation, which sounds very strange, but the whole point of the chocolate meditation is that we give someone a piece of dairy milk chocolate. Yeah. I'm not sponsored by Dairy Milks. Other chocolate brands are available.
Other chocolates are available, yeah.
And what we do is we give them just literally one piece, and then we then give them questions. So we say to them, tell me what that piece of chocolate looks like. Tell me what that piece of chocolate smells like. Tell me what the consistency feels like in your hands. Now put it in your mouth. Tell me what your tongue is feeling, what your mouth is feeling. Now break a piece off, and then you swallow that. And we then talk that through for a good 5 minutes, and they're giving us their feedback on that piece of chocolate. Yeah. And at the very end of that, I said, is there an enjoyment factor there? And they say yes. And I say, well done, you just meditated for 5 minutes. Yeah. Because what you've done is you focused on that one thing for once. And so once you understand that, people say, I can't meditate. I said, I can guarantee you within 5 minutes, I can get you to meditate for 5 minutes.
So I love that. That's absolutely brilliant, because
so please take that away. If everyone's listening, do that, because, and even having a shower, most of the time when I was in corporate world, when I was having a shower the first thing in the morning after the gym, that's when my best ideas would come. That's actually meditation. You know, when you're driving and think, oh God, how did I get here?
Yeah.
You're meditating. All those things are meditation.
Right.
And I think this is why, for me, the word meditation is not the correct word.
What would you use?
Thinking. In my diary, I have thinking time blocked out. I don't have meditation. I still meditate 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's too much, and sometimes I have to squeeze other things in. And especially when I came back to the West after 6 months of being out there, it was a real panic of, oh my God, I need to meditate. And then really I realised my meditation wasn't as good as it was in Thailand, and acceptance of that. And I needed still guidance from the monks, and I still speak to them every day.
Yeah.
And then you realise you're not going to get as good meditation as sitting in a monastery with 65 other monks all vibrating at the same frequency. You're like a super meditator at that point.
Yeah.
Once you understand that, then you kind of go, okay, that's fine. And it's an acceptance. So yeah, I would say you can do 1 minute meditations.
Yeah.
Just sit, just stop. That's meditation. What you just done there.
It's amazing.
The other thing as well is what I teach someone, which is another thing, is that I will say to you, okay, we're going to go into meditation now. And then people go, oh, okay, they sort of get themselves comfortable. And I say, right, okay, so Ian, what I want you to do is I want you to think of ideas of a mouse coming out of a mouse hole. Okay, so what I want you to do is it's going to pop in and pop out again. So tell me the first thought that comes in your head.
Tom and Jerry, I can see the little arch.
So click Tom and Jerry and let's start meditation. What's the first thing?
Sorry, say again.
What's the first thing that comes into your head?
The arch in the hole.
Okay, forget the Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Just tell me about the first thoughts that comes into your head.
Laughter.
So that period of time from when I asked to when you answered, that's meditation. That because you were like, and you were grabbing at something to come into your head. You were wanting something to come into your head. So thinking or meditation is the reverse of that.
Right.
You stop that process happening.
Okay.
And there are 8 levels of meditation. That's the other thing, is that people go, oh my God, what can I do with meditation? Level 3 is that you ask questions that you can get answers for, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper into that. I never got to level 8. It takes years and years and years, but the meditation that I got definitely helps me understand things. You go through your past a huge amount, especially whether you've got that much time. If you think 6 hours a day of meditation, and 4 to 6 hours of chanting and dharma, there's not really a lot else to do in a jungle as a monk.
One thing I'm curious about, so I'm thinking about if people have a propensity to overthink and worry, and you then give them the opportunity to sit uninterrupted, is there a risk, danger that rather than just letting all those movie trailers go by, you actually start potentially catastrophizing even more?
Yeah, I mean, there's bits I'm missing out. So I suppose the key part for me is there's a tuition element to that. So we teach you how to be in a comfortable environment. So we have to balance 2 things. One is called sabai, which is the relaxation part, and the other part is called sati, which is the mental awareness part. Right. So you have to be relaxed and mentally alert at the same time.
Right.
Too relaxed, you do what I used to do before learning. You fall asleep and you start snoring. Okay, and believe you me, monks still go to sabai, and you do find monks that snore.
Yeah.
And then there's the sati side of it, which is the mental awareness. So you're physically aware of everything that's going on around you, but you're not relaxed. So you have to find that balance, and that's the bit that I teach, is trying to find. The way I describe it is that the mixture of water of sabai and sati is like a river.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you are floating in a little rowing boat in between the 2 banks of sabai and sati. If you hit the left-hand bank, you're probably too relaxed and you fall asleep. If you're hitting the consciousness one, you're not getting that relaxation either. So you want to try and float and meander down the river in between the 2. The idea is you get more and more experienced, or more time that you put into your meditation, your riverbank starts to expand, so you can play around a lot more before hitting the banks. Okay. So there is an element of tuition before we just say, oh, don't think of anything, or just accept everything if you're an overthinker.
Yeah.
Because you do have to, once you start to veer off course, how do you come back? When sabai is the easy one because you just fall asleep.
Yeah.
Sati is the harder one because you get more and more determined to fall asleep or be more relaxed, and then you get yourself more stressed.
Yeah, you start then worrying about the fact you can't be,
exactly,
and everything else kicks off.
Exactly, and that's when you then understand what it is about being a monk, because one of the things that everything that we do is to stop any form of stress. So we eat twice a day. We eat at 7 a.m. and we eat before midday. The reason being is that we do a lot of our meditation in the evenings. So by the time that the evening comes for meditation, my food is digested, it's probably passed through my bodily function, and my body's not using any energy whatsoever to do that consumption of food, which actually is a distraction.
Right.
So once we're actually meditating, we're meditating empty, we're light, we're free, we've done our yoga, we've stretched, we're all good, we're feeling relaxed. Boom, and you go into your meditation.
So you've created that space, that environment.
100%. And then what you then do, as a monk, I used to sleep between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Right. And I used to get up at 3 a.m. and I used to do an hour of meditation before meditation class because you wanted more. You'd be wanting to try and find more time to put into meditation. And my best meditation was between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. because literally there was nothing to ingest. I wasn't tired. I was relaxed. I could drop into my meditation very, very quickly and have excellent meditation. And everyone has a different definition of excellent meditation, what that is. It's a feeling of total relaxation.
So just backing out of that a little bit and going back to that moment where you decided enough's enough. I need out of this, and then you went on that, if you will, sabbatical. Mm-hmm. What do you know now that you didn't know?
Oh God, loads. So one of the things that we had to do was we had to kind of crystallize what we were trying to get out of being on the ordination program. Yeah. And bearing in mind, the ordination program is about 10 days before you then do the ordination and actually become a monk. So you have a hair clipping ceremony. For some of us, they can't see, but I'm bald as anything anyway. But you have your hair clipped in the morning before, and then you then have another, and then you have a full ceremony, and that's when you actually then robe. You put onto your saffron robes, and then that's it. You wear them for forever until you leave. And like me, I can't wear them. Yeah. But the word that I said that what I was trying to find or search for was happiness.
Right.
And then that word changed massively in terms of what is happiness. And it's not happiness that I was trying to find. The word I was actually solidified and came out with was contentment.
Right.
And once you find contentment, you can be contentatively unhappy. Because you can be happy or sad, but as long as you're content, it doesn't really matter. If the situation plays out whatever and you're happy with either result, or content with either result, nothing can go wrong. And so for me, that was a massive game changer in terms of business, in terms of personal life, in terms of health, in terms of everything. So even from a fitness perspective, which is probably the lowest common denominator, I really want to work out today. And then the diary gets full, or you put it off and everything else, and you beat yourself up that you didn't have that workout. Yeah. Well, okay, you didn't have that workout. And being content with that and have visibility on that it's actually okay not to have that workout is fine. Another one that they used to teach us, they used to give us our favourite food. So I quite like ice cream. And so we'd have to queue up for our ice cream. And of course, I'd push myself to the front of the queue and I'd have my ice cream. But then in the end, learning contentment was I'd stand at the back of the queue and thinking, I might not get any ice cream.
But it doesn't matter.
But it didn't matter.
So in a lot of the people that I'm sure that you will interface with in your role, your job, as I will as well, there are people who are trying to, and I use the term, get on in life and achieve stuff. How do you explain, rationalise wanting to achieve stuff and the contentment?
Okay, so this is where the 1% way comes in,
right?
Because I think most people when they want to get on, they want to be high achievers. They always focus on the end goal. And so I'm like, that's great, and you should always have visibility on that end goal. But my problem, I guess, as an entrepreneur was I was blinded by that goal, and it was at any cost, I was getting to that goal. Well done, but you might have actually destroyed 10 people behind you, or gone through 20 staff, or not been as congruent as you possibly could do in terms of your business dealings, etc., etc. So it's okay. Well, if you then take the focus away 100% from the goal, what am I actually focusing on? So for me, it's about focusing on the journey. And so in the journey, there's contentment. And the way to split up the journey is by doing it 1% at a time. So hence the 1% way.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating in some ways. I spent quite a lot of time a few years ago coaching beginner runners.
Mm-hmm.
And, they'd often always ask the question, so why do you want to run? And it would always be, I want to tick off a 10K. Yeah, so it's about...
Mm-hmm. The goal.
Yeah, the goal. After a while, when you asked why a few times and you got to know them, you realised that it was far more complicated than
absolutely.
that. And then the secret was you knew when that person was going to continue running because they enjoyed the process of running.
It's the same. We were talking about what do I do in my spare time. One of the things I do is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
And so it's the hardest sport in the world, but you have to get good at being uncomfortable. If you're getting squeezed or choked from some guy that's 20 times the size of you, and you're still enjoying that process of doing that.
Yeah.
Likewise, we get graded by a belt system. It takes ages to get a belt. So, you get all the guys that come in, I want to get my blue belt, which is the first real big step. Don't worry about the blue belt. Blue belt will come. Enjoy that process. And some weeks you'll be really good, and some weeks you'll be shockingly bad.
And this is where the contentment's playing out.
Absolutely right. Because if you plateau, and most sports people do. I'm lucky that I've got a lot of high-end athletes, either powerlifting or strongmen, and they all plateau, and they get frustrated that they're not progressing, they're not smashing another PB in the next 6 weeks phase or whatever it might be. I'm like, get used to being comfortable on that plateau. It's a lonely place, but if you like that place, you will exponentially grow.
There's an interesting. There's a story that I often circle back on in powerlifting, and it's to do with this comfort, discomfort, but also creating this limiting belief, if you will.
That's right.
And it's a guy. He was called Vasily Alexeyev.
Right.
Great weightlifter, and I think he'd got the clean and jerk. And I may not get the figures right now, but I think he was something like 245 kilos, best in the world.
Yeah, it's a big lift.
But believed it was impossible to do any more than that. Until I think his coach messed with him a little bit, and long and short, he's actually been lifting 250. And suddenly that unlocked that plateau.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So somewhere in there, this being content to fail.
Absolutely right. But it's not a failure. That's the thing. And it's contentment either way. When I came back, I found it quite difficult to adjust to be a Western monk, because one, I couldn't do the 227 precepts that we took, just physically impossible to do. So I took the layperson's version of that. But it was very much a case of the way that we're programmed in the West, which is, like you said, success and failure. Yeah. Well, there is merit in both. There really is. Success is great, but it also could be detrimental.
And I suppose the other thing that we're also not great at is actually knowing what success means.
Everyone has their own definition of that. But I think from a Western's perspective, it's very much materialistic. Yeah. I remember very clearly, we've just obviously had Goodwood Festival of Speed, and I was lucky enough to be a guest of Aston Martin and Rolls-Royce. So I got to see the new Rolls-Royce Spectre, the electric car, and the Cullinan and everything else. And I came away. Now, I'm a massive petrol head, always have been, and I've been very, very lucky to own some very, very lovely cars in my time. And I came away going, do you know what? I'm going to work bloody hard. I'm going to get myself a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. And then immediately I shot myself down and going, wow, that's consumption. Yeah. We're not supposed to have that as monks.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to the monks and say, what am I feeling here? Is this correct? Is it not correct? Everything else? And they were like, it's fine. it's totally fine, but just temper it down slightly. And if that's your goal, then great. But obviously, at what a cost does that come?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you're then going to be spending less time meditating? Does it mean you're going to be spending more time working? Is it less time trying to spread the word of the Dharma, the things that are important to me? Am I living less of a congruent life to get that goal? So I'm trying to still work out what the right balance of the two is, because although on one hand I was quite shocked at myself of falling back into those habits of want and need and all those type of ego things that pull you around, I recognising that's actually quite interesting, and then how you work around it. So,
do you think you mentioned that sort of your background was a far more regimented background? You've spent time in the services forces. Do you think that, I guess to turn it the other way, were those significant influences, you think, on where you find yourself now?
Now as a monk, or before the monk part?
Now as a monk, as you are now, the Glenn that I'm talking to now across here. What were the influences of those earlier?
That's an interesting question. To me, the army was very, very easy because I had such a strict upbringing. I mean, I literally got into the army and they were teaching us how to polish shoes and iron and all that sort of stuff. I've been doing that since I was 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So the army was fairly simple in terms of the structure of it, because I'd always had that structure beforehand. And then I became a management consultant and I worked in the city, and again it's very structured, and there was very much, okay, if you do A and B, C will happen. If you do A, B, C, D and E, you will eventually get to Z and it's all good.
Yeah.
Where I'm at now, I guess in terms of the discipline, there's very much a discipline involved in that. So I think it has played a part in to make sense of things, because I put things in order.
Yeah.
And there's an orderly fashion to being a monk.
Yes.
In a very strange way. It's kind of nice that I think the human soul does need discipline, does need order. I don't think it works very well being undisciplined. That doesn't mean to say, but people use that word in the wrong way. They say disciplined is not creative. Well, it is. You can be creatively disciplined.
Yes.
And I think that's in all aspects of your life.
I suppose there's a word there. I like the word habit. Because isn't it? Because discipline. What we're really saying, if you're disciplined, it means you habitually do something in a certain way.
Yeah, and I think that the downside with the word habit is that you can be disciplined to be doing something, but have the flexibility like bamboo to sway a little bit. Habit becomes too rigid.
Right.
And I think you have to be a little bit more lucid, I guess, in some ways. So, for example, I refer this back to jiu-jitsu. If you're very rigid in your jiu-jitsu, you'll get flipped and you'll get swept, and that's it, you'll be on a choke. Yeah. They talk about being the wet towel in jiu-jitsu, which is you're all-consuming, but you can move as you wish. And so, yeah, funnily enough, there's lots of things that since monkhood, everything has just been opened up, and they talk about enlightenment. For me, it was a massive enlightening thing, because there were so many different parts of my life that were easier to deal with after being a monk.
So do you think, given what's gone before and the rigidity and the discipline of military, do you think if you hadn't experienced that, then maybe would you not have arrived at where you are now?
I think there's very much a danger of that, for sure. I didn't think I needed to have a spiritual awakening in some way to have a realization on what life's all about. What is the important stuff, and it's not what you think.
Yeah.
And I think also influence was huge. Where I was in terms of my peer group, in terms of my social grouping, of what I thought was success. We talked about that. What is success?
Yeah.
It was this sort of where you live, what suit you wear, what watch you wear, what car you drive, what bar do you go to, where do you go on holiday.
Yeah.
Very much influenced by that, and that used to make me strive and move forward. It's not about that. Life is a bigger picture than that.
Much bigger picture.
Much bigger picture. But yeah.
Oh, we could go on and on.
I told you we could do this in two-parter. I knew we could get it done in one.
Yeah.
But no, it's true.
So, who do you think have been your key influences? God.
honestly too many to kind of really name names. If I had to name names, I guess one guy I met 5 years ago, a chap called David McCourt, who's a multi-billionaire, a philanthropist, and he kind of made me realise that actually having all that money and jets and boats and everything else is just superfluous. They just don't really mean anything. And I didn't get it at the time. He wrote a book called Total Rethink, which I think you should all have a read of. And he became my mentor for some time. And I remember I used to meet up with him, and I said, "Oh, did you take the private jet?" And he said, "No, I got rid of the jet." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because it just became aggravation." And so he used to have 3 houses around the world, and they were done exactly the same thing. He'd have the same things in the house, all the same, and just lead a very boring life, realistically. So I think he was quite influential in terms of making me realise even when you make it, in terms of what we class from a Western's perspective, making it, there's more to it than that. And he was striving to find solutions to big world problems such as education, and plastics in the sea. Was a massive advocate of how to deal with those things. And I thought, God, this guy thinks about those things. Yeah. As a billionaire, should I be thinking about those things? Maybe then it will rub off a little bit, and now I need to go on my path, and that was that. Clearly, all of the monks, there's not one that stands out that is more influential than the other. As a collective group, I'll forever be indebted to them. And the plan is that I go back once a year and get my top up from them, which is fantastic. And also support a boys' school out there in the very north in the country for about 250 boys that get taken from 7 to 16 and get given an education, but they have to become monks. Yeah. So I would say that. And then other people have really been the ones that have really kind of just been bloody horrible, that have spurred me in the right and the wrong direction in some ways to be who I am now. And I very much now a collective parts of all of me. There's still that sparkle in my eye for that entrepreneurial ship, but it'll be done with a different outlook this time.
Right, that's great. So just bringing it towards a conclusion, there's a couple of questions which I'd like to finish on. First one is one which I ask every guest, and that is, Glenn, if you knowing what you know now, if you could write the younger Glenn a letter,
oh good God,
what would you put in it?
Well, it'll be quite long. Honestly, I think there'd be very few words, and probably 4 words, which would be "Don't be a dick." I think if we just be nice, just don't be a dick.
Right.
I think that's pretty much, that's it, really. Just be nice.
Yeah. Plenty of room for that.
Yeah. I think if we all took that 4 little words, world would be a great place to live.
Motorways would be more pleasant.
Motorways, but I think a lot of the world problems would be solved, and it's we need help. Everybody needs help, and that's something that I'd never realised. I knew about collaboration, obviously, within business, and I think that was a big turning point, was to understand collaboration. But that was very much of, I'm collaborating so I can get to be somewhere for me. What's in it for me? Yeah. I do stuff now that doesn't benefit me, but actually gives pleasure to other people. Right. And I think that's better.
Brilliant. And the last question I have for you, this season we've asked people to leave a question for the next guest or a subsequent guest, and yours today has been left by Ruben Stanislaus.
I know Ruben very well.
And Ruben, I
hope it's a nice question if it's Ruben.
I mean, what a lovely guy.
He is an amazing guy, and one to watch for sure.
So his question is, and he didn't know who was going to be answering this.
Oh, well, I'm seeing him in a couple of weeks at Silverstone. I know, at Snetterton, so we'll see.
What is your drive?
To help people live a stress-managed life.
Brilliant. Glenn, it's been a joy to have the conversation.
Thank you.
Would you come back?
Oh, yeah, let's do it again.
Fantastic.
Can we do longer this time?
Yeah. Well, thanks ever so much for taking the time. So you have been listening to One Thought at a Time, and our guest this time, Glenn, the tattooed monk. If you would like to reach out to Glenn, please do so. And obviously we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you have been, Thanks for listening.